In today's video, we are reacting to how every infamous dictator died. You know what I'm saying? Some of the most hated people, you know what I'm saying, to walk the earth, you say, have met their demise. You know, people are love it. You love to see it. These bad people meet their fates. And with that being said, let's go to get into them and see how, they met their end.
Adolf Hitler. When Soviet tanks rumbled through the streets of Berlin in late April 1945, Adolf Hitler knew his empire had crumbled. The man who once commanded millions was now trapped underground like a rat. Hitler spent his final days in a
Trapped underground like a hoe. Going out real sad, Hitler. Yeah, you going out like a bitch.
concrete bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, surrounded by a shrinking circle of loyalists who watched their Führer deteriorate before their eyes. On April 29th, he married his longtime companion Eva Braun in a bizarre midnight ceremony. The next day, April 30th, 1945, Hitler said his final goodbyes. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, he and Eva retreated to their private quarters. What happened next was confirmed by those who found them. Hitler had bitten into a cyanide capsule and shot himself in the head simultaneously. Eva died beside him, having only consumed the poison. Their bodies were carried up the bunker stairs, doused with gasoline in the Reich Chancellery garden, and set ablaze while Soviet artillery boomed in the distance. The man who'd sent millions to their deaths in camps and battlefields chose to escape judgment by his own hand, leaving nothing but charred remains and a legacy of horror. He was 56 years old. News of Hitler's death spread across the world, marking the end of the European theater of World War II, and spawning decades of conspiracy theories about whether he really died or somehow escaped. Benito Mussolini.
I see what they said about Epstein, how apparently Epstein ain't saying they ain't Mark Epstein. Out of that, I remember them saying something about Tupac really never getting murked. They said Mike Jack was never really murked. They say these people are somewhere on an island or something that's ducked off, just living life. It'd be crazy to think about. Imagine Mike Jack standing next to Hitler. In combination.
Mussolini spent his final hours running. The Italian dictator who'd once strutted on balconies preaching about a new Roman Empire was now disguised in a German military coat, trying to flee to Switzerland.
Going out like a hoe. Come on, man.
April 27, 1945, communist partisans stopped a German convoy at a checkpoint near Lake Como. Among the soldiers, they found Il Duce himself, the great fascist leader, hiding like a common criminal. Mussolini and his mistress, Clara Petacci, were pulled from the convoy and held overnight. The next day, April 28th, a partisan leader named Walter Audisio arrived with orders to execute them. Accounts vary on the exact details, but what's certain is this: Mussolini and Petacci were taken to a villa gate in the small village of Giulino di Mezzegra and shot with a submachine gun. The partisans loaded the bodies into a van and drove them to Milan, to a place called Piazzale Loreto. This wasn't random. Months earlier, Mussolini's regime had executed 15 partisans and left their bodies on display at that exact location. Now it was his turn. When the truck arrived at dawn on April 29th,
ain't that about a bitch?
Mussolini, Petacci, and several other executed fascist officials were dumped on the ground. A crowd gathered quickly, and things got ugly fast. People kicked the corpses, spat on them, fired at them again. One woman reportedly fired 5 more times into Mussolini's body, once for each of her dead sons. Then came the finale. The bodies were hung upside down from the roof of a gas station. The crowd went wild, jeering and celebrating beneath the corpses. News of Mussolini's brutal death flashed across the world, signaling the definitive collapse of fascist Italy and marking a symbolic turning point in the final unraveling of World War II. Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-il ruled North Korea for 17 years with an iron grip, maintaining one of the most isolated and oppressive regimes on Earth. He cultivated a personality cult, so extreme that state propaganda claimed he could control the weather and didn't need to use the bathroom. But in December 2011, the man who'd been portrayed as
you mean to tell me this nigga was walking around with a shitty ass booty, bruh? I was getting led by a nigga with a shitty booty. Could never be me.
Nearly superhuman died from something decidedly human, a heart attack. On December 17, 2011, Kim Jong-il was traveling by train through North Korea when he suffered a massive heart attack, reportedly brought on by physical and mental stress. He was 69 years old. North Korean state media didn't announce his death until 2 days later, on December 19th, claiming he died at 8:30 a.m. on his train, while on a field guidance tour. The announcement described him passing during a great mental and physical strain, while dedicating himself to the nation. Official reports said he'd been suffering from diabetes and heart disease for years, though the regime had hidden this from the public. When the news finally broke, North Korean television showed anchor Ri Chun-hee dressed in black, weeping as she announced the dear leader's passing. State media broadcast footage of citizens collapsing in theatrical grief, wailing in the streets and bowing before his portraits. Whether the grief was genuine or performed out of fear, the spectacle was surreal. Kim Jong-il's body was embalmed and placed on display in a glass coffin at the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun in Pyongyang, lying in state alongside his father Kim Il-sung. Unlike many dictators who met violent ends, Kim Jong-il died of natural causes, never facing justice for the starvation, imprisonment, and execution of countless North Koreans. He passed power seamlessly to his son, Kim Jong-un, ensuring the dynasty continued. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin ruled through terror for nearly 3 decades, but in the end, that same terror might have killed him. On the night of March 1, 1953, Stalin hosted one of his infamous late-night dinners at his dacha near Moscow. He drank heavily with his inner circle of Soviet officials, the same men who lived in constant fear of purges and midnight arrests. Around 4 a.m., Stalin dismissed everyone and retired to his private quarters. Then something happened. Hours passed. Stalin always summoned his guards and staff by mid-morning, but March 2nd came and went with silence from his room. Here's where it gets darkest. His guards and household staff knew something was wrong, but they were absolutely terrified to enter without being called. Stalin had cultivated such a climate of fear that his own people were too scared to check if he was alive. By the time someone finally worked up the courage to peek inside that evening, they found the 74-year-old dictator lying on the floor in a puddle of his own urine, partially paralyzed from a massive stroke. He'd been there for nearly 12 hours. Medical help was summoned, but the delay had done its damage. Stalin lingered for days, unable to speak, his face contorted, slowly dying while doctors tried desperately to save him. Some historians believe his guards delayed on purpose. Others think his own officials might have poisoned him or withheld help intentionally. On March 5, 1953, at 9:50 p.m., Stalin finally died. The announcement triggered mass public mourning across the Soviet Union, but privately, many breathed sighs of relief as his reign came to an end. Rafael Trujillo. Rafael Trujillo ruled the Dominican Republic like his personal kingdom for 31 brutal years, ordering assassinations, tortures, and disappearances with casual cruelty. But on the night of May 30, 1961, the hunter became the hunted. Trujillo was being driven on a highway outside Santo Domingo when several cars suddenly blocked his route. A group of Dominican conspirators, many of them military officers who'd once served under him, emerged with weapons. They'd been planning this for months, with quiet support from the CIA, who wanted Trujillo gone. The 69-year-old dictator's car was riddled with bullets. Some accounts say Trujillo tried to fight back, pulling out his own pistol and firing at his attackers before being shot multiple times. Within minutes, El Jefe, the chief, was dead on the side of the road, his body
Damn.
torn apart by gunfire. The conspirators loaded his corpse into one of their cars and drove away, unsure what to do next. Trujillo's body ended up stored in the trunk of a car for hours while the assassins debated their next move. Eventually, his remains were recovered by loyalist forces. What followed was chaos. Some conspirators were caught and executed, others fled, and the country descended into political turmoil. For a ruler so brutal, Trujillo's end was fittingly the same. Nicolae Ceausescu. Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu spent Christmas Day 1989 facing a firing squad, and the whole thing was captured on video. After ruling Romania with an iron fist.
And that's gotta be a terrible way to go. Y'all know how those memes on Instagram where it be like, nigga, beg for your life right now, nigga. Nigga, we gonna record you, nigga. We want you to beg on camera right now for your life. It's a horrible way to go out, bro. Because if you beg, not only did they murked you anyway, but you went outside like a bitch. Like, and that's the scenario, bro. You gotta just walk up to the nigga, put the gun in your head, and tell him, bro, just do it, bro. Like, you go murk me anyway. At least let me go out with some pride.
Fist for over 2 decades, the Ceausescus watched their power evaporate during the country's anti-communist revolution. On December 22nd, they attempted to flee Bucharest by helicopter as protests overwhelmed the capital. They were captured within hours. 3 days later, on Christmas Day, they stood trial in a small room at a military base in Targovist. The trial was a rushed affair, lasting barely an hour, with charges of genocide and embezzlement among others. The elderly couple appeared confused and defiant, with Elena repeatedly protesting that the proceedings were illegal. The verdict was never in doubt. Guilty, death sentence. Minutes after the trial concluded, Nicolae and Elena were led outside to a courtyard wall, soldiers lined up. The couple was given no chance to say goodbye or make final statements beyond their protests during the trial. The firing squad opened fire, and both Ceausescus dropped dead almost instantly. their bodies riddled with over 100 bullets. The execution was filmed, and that evening,
Young Dolph knows something though about 100 shots. Well, I guess not, cause he's not alive. Damn, getting tore up like off the bone like that is crazy.
Romanian television broadcast the news, along with footage proving they were dead. The footage spread internationally, shocking viewers who watched a longtime communist leader go from power to execution in just 3 days. Pol Pot. Pol Pot, the architect of Cambodia's genocide that killed up to 2 million people, died quietly in a jungle hut in 1998. After the Khmer Rouge regime fell in 1979, Pol Pot fled into the jungle near the Thai border where he lived as a fugitive for nearly 2 decades. By 1998, he was 73 years old, under house arrest by a splinter faction of his own former movement. On April 15, 1998, Pol Pot died in his sleep, reportedly from heart failure. The timing was suspicious. Just days earlier, remaining Khmer Rouge leaders had agreed to hand him over for an international war crimes trial. Instead, he escaped justice by dying in a bamboo hut. The Khmer Rouge, knowing how skeptical the world would be, did something macabre. They displayed Pol Pot's corpse to journalists, inviting them to photograph the body to prove he was really dead. Images of his lifeless body appeared in newspapers globally.
That's crazy. Standing by these person's body. Come on, man.
Photograph the body to prove he was really dead. Images of his life.
This is he's just like basically just oral farming by this body. Like, come on, what are we doing, bruh? Come on, man. This nigga recording this. Jesus Christ, bro.
Lifeless body appeared in newspapers globally. There would be no trial, no accountability, no chance for victims to face him in court. The butcher of Cambodia had literally died in his sleep and avoided answering for millions of deaths. His body was cremated on a makeshift pyre of tires and trash, a pathetic end for a man who'd orchestrated industrial-scale murder. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein's execution on December 30, 2006, was supposed to be a solemn, controlled event. It wasn't. After the US-led invasion of Iraq and a lengthy trial for crimes against humanity, Saddam was sentenced to death by hanging. At dawn on that December morning, the 69-year-old former dictator was led into an execution chamber at an Iraqi military base in Baghdad. Official protocol was supposed to keep things dignified, but someone in the room had a cell phone. As Saddam stood on the gallows with a noose around his neck, guards began taunting him, shouting sectarian insults. Saddam responded with defiance, reciting prayers until the trapdoor opened and he dropped. The whole thing was captured on a grainy cell phone video that leaked online almost immediately. Saddam, dressed in a black coat, remained composed even as the insults flew. When the floor gave way beneath him, it was over quickly. His body was later returned to his family.
See, you know what I'm saying? That's a respectful way to go out. You know what I'm saying? He died with his pride. He said, "Yeah, bro, if I'm gonna pass away anyway, bro, I'm gonna at least go out with some stuff. I ain't gonna let them. I ain't gonna sit here and beg for my life, bro. If you gonna kill me, bro, kill me. That's simple."
And buried in his hometown of Tikrit. The execution sparked massive controversy. Some viewed it as justice served. Others condemned the disrespectful treatment of a man facing death, regardless of his crimes. Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi ruled Libya for 42 years with a bizarre mix of brutality and eccentricity. On October 20, 2011, he died begging for mercy in a drainage pipe, and the whole thing was filmed on cell phones. During Libya's civil war, Gaddafi fled Tripoli as rebel forces closed in. He made it to his hometown of Sirte, where he held out for weeks before NATO airstrikes destroyed his convoy. Gaddafi escaped the wreckage and hid in a concrete drainage pipe with a few remaining bodyguards. When rebels found him, they dragged the 69-year-old dictator out into the open. Multiple cell phone videos captured what happened next: a bloodied, disoriented Gaddafi, his face swollen and his clothes torn, being manhandled by jubilant fighters. In one video, he's heard pleading, asking what he did wrong. Rebels shouted victoriously, some struck him, and chaos reigned. What exactly happened in those final minutes remains disputed, but Gaddafi was shot, reportedly in the head, and died shortly after his capture. His body was later displayed in Misrata, where locals lined up to see the corpse of their former dictator, lying in a commercial freezer. The phrase "caught like a rat in a drain" became headlines. His body was eventually buried in an unmarked grave in the desert, location undisclosed. Augusto Pinochet. Augusto Pinochet ruled Chile for 17 years after seizing power in a bloody 1973 coup that overthrew the democratically elected government of Salvador Allende. During his dictatorship, thousands of Chileans were tortured, killed, or disappeared. But unlike many dictators, Pinochet didn't die violently or in exile. He died in a hospital bed, old and comfortable, never fully answering for his crimes. By 2006, the 91-year-old former dictator had been battling health problems for years. He'd suffered multiple heart attacks and strokes, and his body was finally giving out. On December 3rd, 2006,
I'm not scared. That's my birthday.
Pinochet suffered a massive heart attack and was rushed to Santiago's military hospital. Doctors performed emergency surgery, but complications set in quickly. Over the next week, his condition deteriorated. He suffered additional heart attacks and developed pulmonary edema, his lungs filling with fluid. On December 10th, 2006, exactly 1 week after his initial heart attack, and on International Human Rights Day, Augusto Pinochet died surrounded by family members. He was 91 years old. When news of his death reached the streets of Santiago, the reaction was split. Some Chileans celebrated, gathering in the streets to cheer and wave flags, relieved that the dictator
Why are they? Why are they showing the Texas flag? I feel like wrong flag, bro.
was finally gone. Others mourned, viewing him as the man who'd saved Chile from communism and brought economic stability. Here's what made Pinochet's death particularly frustrating for those seeking justice. He'd spent his final years fighting extradition and prosecution. He'd been arrested in London in 1998 on Spanish warrants for human rights violations, but was eventually released on medical grounds and returned to Chile. Back home, he faced multiple indictments for human rights abuses, tax evasion, and embezzlement, but his lawyers repeatedly argued he was too sick and senile to stand trial. The cases dragged on for years, and Pinochet never spent a day in prison for the atrocities committed under his rule. His funeral was a private military affair, and he was cremated shortly after. Pinochet's ashes were divided among family members, with some reportedly scattered in the ocean. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones, and feel free to
Well, with that being said, man, y'all let me know y'all thoughts on this in the comment section below. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Every single sub is greatly appreciated. And until next time, I'll catch y'all boys later. Peace.